I started noticing something while researching Japanese food culture. People weren't necessarily counting calories. They weren't walking around talking about macros. They weren't constantly saying they were on a diet. And yet, Japan has one of the lowest adult obesity rates among wealthy countries. So I kept asking the same question. What happens when the food environment itself makes overeating less normal? Hana, show us. Here's the interesting part. Japan isn't healthy because everyone there has incredible willpower. And it's definitely not because Japanese food is magically calorie-free. Tempura exists. Ramen exists. Desserts exist. Convenience stores are everywhere. The difference is what people repeatedly experience as normal. 5 habits keep showing up, and the first one starts before you even take the first bite. 1. The default meal is built differently. Think about a traditional Japanese meal. Rice, a protein such as fish, miso soup, vegetables, or small side dishes, several modest portions instead of one enormous plate. Foods are often grilled, steamed, simmered, or lightly prepared rather than automatically deep-fried. The important part isn't that every meal looks exactly like this. It's the structure. You can see what you're eating. Different foods have their own place. Portions are easier to recognize. Vegetables and soup can add volume without turning the meal into one giant calorie-dense dish. Compare that with a Western meal, where a huge entree, fries, sugary drink, and dessert can arrive together as one normal serving. Nobody has to consciously decide to overeat. The portion already decided for them. That's what makes the Japanese pattern interesting. Healthy eating doesn't always begin with saying no. Sometimes it begins with making a smaller amount feel normal. 2. Convenience doesn't automatically mean junk food. This one surprised me. Japan has an enormous convenience store culture. The word is kombini, and you can find them almost everywhere. But walk into a Japanese convenience store, and the quick food choices can look very different from what people imagine when they hear convenience food. Onigiri, boiled eggs, salads, grilled fish, miso soup, bento meals, yogurt, fruit, and yes, chips, sweets, fried chicken, and desserts are there too. The point isn't that Japanese convenience stores are health food stores. They're not. The interesting part is that a reasonably balanced meal can be convenient too. That changes the decision before willpower even enters the picture. If you're hungry, and the easiest option is a rice ball, egg, salad, and tea, that's what you might grab. If the easiest option is a giant bag of chips and a sugary drink, that's what the environment pushes you toward. Research on food environments shows that what's physically available around people can influence eating behavior and obesity risk. In one Japanese study of school children, greater neighborhood convenience store density was associated with higher obesity odds, showing that Japan's environment isn't automatically protective either. And that's important. Japan doesn't have a magical food environment. It simply has different defaults in many situations. 3. Children learn food before they learn dieting. This may be the biggest difference of all. Japan has a formal concept called Shokuiku, usually translated as food education. In 2005, Japan enacted the Basic Law on Shokuiku, making food education part of a broader national effort to teach people about food, nutrition, and healthy eating. Schools don't just hand children lunch and move on. Food education can be connected to the meal itself. Nutrition teachers help students understand what they're eating. School lunches are used as opportunities to learn about food. In many schools, students participate in serving and cleaning up. The result is subtle. A child isn't necessarily thinking, "I'm controlling my calories." They're repeatedly learning what a balanced meal looks like, how food gets prepared, and how eating fits into everyday life. That's very different from waiting until adulthood, gaining weight, and suddenly downloading a calorie-counting app. By then, you're trying to change a lifetime of defaults. In Japan, some of those defaults are introduced much earlier. 4. Sweetness has a smaller baseline. Now here's something easy to underestimate. Your idea of sweet enough isn't completely fixed. If you constantly drink extremely sweet beverages and eat heavily sweetened foods, moderate sweetness can start feeling disappointing. But if your everyday diet is less intensely sweet, the same food can taste much sweeter. That's why the Japanese approach to dessert can feel different. Sweet foods absolutely exist. Japanese desserts can be incredibly rich. But sweetness isn't necessarily the center of every meal or drink. Tea is often unsweetened. Portions of desserts can be modest. And sugary drinks aren't automatically the default companion to lunch. The goal isn't to eliminate sugar. It's to avoid training your taste buds to expect maximum sweetness every time. Because when very sweet becomes normal, everything else starts tasting boring. 5. Stop eating before the plate becomes a challenge. This is where a famous Japanese idea often enters the conversation. Hara hachi, the Okinawan expression commonly interpreted as eating until you're around 80% full. It shouldn't be treated as a scientifically proven magic formula. And it isn't a rule followed by every Japanese person. But the underlying idea is useful. You don't need to wait until you're completely stuffed to stop eating. And Japanese meals often make this easier because portions can be smaller and foods are served in separate dishes. There's another cultural idea that fits here too, matanai, the feeling that wasting something valuable is regrettable. It can encourage appreciation for food rather than treating huge portions as automatically better value. But here's the sentence I keep coming back to. If your environment constantly gives you oversized portions, sugary drinks, ultra-processed snacks, and food designed to be impossible to stop eating, staying lean requires repeated resistance. If your normal environment gives you smaller portions, varied foods, balanced meals, and years of food education, you don't need to fight the same battle every day. That's the real lesson. It's not that Japanese people have superior genetics. It's not that they never eat fast food. And it's definitely not that everyone in Japan is naturally thin. Japan's obesity and metabolic health challenges are changing too. The advantage comes from ordinary defaults repeated over thousands of meals, smaller portions, different meal structure, convenient balanced options, food education starting young, and a more moderate baseline for sweetness and fullness. None of these require a heroic diet. They change what normal eating feels like. And maybe that's why the most interesting Japanese health habit isn't a food at all. It's the environment around the food. Because when the healthy choice becomes ordinary, you don't need extraordinary discipline to make it. So here's my question. If you could redesign just one meal in your week using these 5 Japanese habits, which meal would you change first? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.